When I'm buying a property that I'm going to BRRRR, there's my first year expenses and my second year expenses. I know in this deal, when I buy this property, I'm going to be fully emptying the building, I'm going to be doing a full renovation, and I'm going to be re-renting at new rents. Which means if I can keep my total cost below $200 per unit, I can be full cash out on the refi. I would prefer not to have any of my own money in the deal. So what I need to do is I need to do this deal in 10 months or less. I'm skipping through all of that BS and I am focusing strictly on the cost per unit, the cost to reno, and the cost to acquire this fully private at 12%. I owe 1.45. Plus the interest costs, I'm full cash out, $400,000 in equity, and an asset that I own. Hey, what's up YouTube? Kyle Ford here again. Talk about how I break down numbers, how I look at a deal. And I'm not going to get into a full detailed cash flow analysis here, but I want you to understand how I look at a BRRRR type property. When it comes to running numbers, when you're holding a property long term, you need to be looking at all the expenses, vacancy, repair and maintenance, property management. And when you run your cash flow, it's very important that you're accounting for all those expenses. But to me, those are second year expenses. When I'm buying a property that I'm going to BRRRR, there's my first year expenses and my second year expenses. So my number one focus when I'm buying BRRRR properties is cost per unit. When I bought the 10-plex property, I barely even looked at the guy's current numbers because it was irrelevant to me. His expenses were not how I manage properties. His rent was not where the market needed to be. So when I buy properties in Waterloo region, I know on the back end of my properties, I can get them reappraised at $250K per unit. These are for flats, so standard 700 square foot, 2-bedroom apartments. I know that I can get those appraised at $250. So I have a deal right now that just came across to me that I made my initial offer at $150 per unit with a reno budget of approximately $25K per flat reno. So that's reno. Okay? So now the people ask, well, what are his expenses? What are his income? I know in this deal, when I buy this property, I'm going to be fully emptying the building, I'm going to be doing a full renovation, and I'm going to be re-renting at new rents. So his current income and expenses is irrelevant to me. I'm going to run my second year numbers based on my income and my expenses. So in this specific deal, the guy just came back to me at $156 per unit. So if I go 25K plus 156, so the other thing I want to add here, well, I got at $250,000 a unit, if I'm getting top market rents, I can get commercial financing at 80% loan to value. Which means if I can keep my total cost below $200 per unit, I can be full cash out on the refi. So in this scenario, if I'm $156 per unit, $25,000 per reno, my total expense per renovation and acquisition is $181 per unit. So then I reverse engineer this and say I want to do this with none of my own money, which means I have 19K times 8 units available in private funding. So 19 times 8, 152. So that equals 152,000. So I know that when I'm acquiring property, if I'm at 156 per unit on acquisition, $25,000 in reno, I'm into it for 181. If I want to be full cash out at 80% loan to value of 250, I cannot spend more than 200,000 per unit, which means I have $152,000 available in private financing costs. I run all my numbers at 12%. So what that means, if I want to borrow the entire $1.45 million at 12%, my total financing cost is $174,000, which means I'm going to have $22,000 of my own money in this deal to do this 100% finance at 12%. I would prefer not to have any of my own money in the deal. So what I need to do is I need to do this deal in 10 months or less. That's basically taking the 174 dividing by 12 months equals 14.5 times 10 months equals, I believe the number is 150, which is 2,000 equals 150K. So, well, other people are getting bogged down on this project on the fact that the guy doesn't pay his own, that the tenants pay utilities, or that the snow removal is too high, or the insurance isn't right. I'm skipping through all of that BS, and I'm focusing strictly on the cost per unit, the cost to reno, and the cost to acquire this fully private at 12%. And if I can get all those numbers in line, I know his expenses are irrelevant. Now, it's very important on the back end when you're running your second year numbers to make sure that you can maintain positive cash flow at 80% of 250. So 200,000 cost per unit, that's an after repair value of 250,000 times 8, I probably could have done this in my head, is $2 million. So if I'm in it for 1.45, after repair value is $2 million times 80% is 1.6 million, I owe 1.45. Plus the interest costs, I'm full cash out, $400,000 in equity and an asset that I own. This is how I look at numbers. This is my back of napkin. I'm doing a lot of this stuff in my head when I'm walking through the property and understanding what I'm willing to pay for it. And then I'm also going to spend much more time on my second year cash flow analysis to make sure that that property is going to be supported in the second year, but I'm acquiring like this.